What's going on, guys? Jimmo here again with RefinishNetwork.com, and today I have this Honda Civic that I'll be painting this fender on and blending the color into the door. So the first thing I'm doing here before spraying is wiping it down with a tack rag to pick up any debris that might have landed on the surface in between running around after I washed it originally. So I'm just going to apply this orientation coat or wet bed, whatever you want to call it. It's going to fill in any minor scratches on my blend panel before I start to apply my color. And this is waterborne paint, but it works just the same using a solvent. So what the orientation coat does by filling in those scratches is just creates a smooth panel for you to blend your paint across. That way the metallics don't get caught in those small scratches and stand up in a way that you don't want them to. So what I'm doing here now is just applying my first coat of color with my Developus CVI. I like to use two guns when I'm doing a job like this, but you could get away with just using one. Now the biggest challenge most people run into when blending a light colored metallic, usually silvers and golds in particular, is a problem in the industry known as haloing. And when you're blending your color out, that's simply when most of your color lands wet, but on the edges it lands dry and it reflects differently, so you can see a visible ring on that edge. So here's the second coat going on after about 5-10 minutes of flash. So some ways you can avoid haloing is you can use that orientation coat all the way up in between each coat. So I could spray that door and then blend my color into it with each coat, and that's going to let all of the product land with the same consistency. So it's all landing wet, so I don't have that dry edge for the halo to be created. And you're going to find when you're doing jobs in general that halos are more of a problem when you're trying to keep the blend very small. So when you have a job where you can blend halfway through the door, then take the blend space if you have it. So here's my third and final coat going on, and with each coat I'm bringing it a little bit further out, and I'm going to try and angle it so you don't want to have a dead stop. You want to be flicking your wrist at the edge, so you're kind of fanning the paint and blending it out down the panel. And some other things that you should try to do is angle it, so you can take a few passes going upwards, a few going downwards, and it'll help kind of create a better blend. I'm actually keeping this blend fairly small. You can take up to halfway, 3/4 of the panel if you'd like. This color actually found to blend out a lot easier than I thought it was going to. So before I apply my clear, I like to check things over once with the 3M Sun Gun, which is pretty well just I think a $300 flashlight. But what's special about this light is it contains more of the visible spectrums of light rather than, say, a tungsten or halogen bulb. This contains more elements similar to what you're going to see outside. And it's good for checking coverage, so I'm going to check all the trouble spots on my edges, the wheel wells, make sure that I've completely covered those areas with paint before I apply my clear. And I think this thing's paid for itself a few times over now. I've checked things over with the Sun Gun where it appears to be covered, then once you get the light on, you're like, oh, I need a little bit more paint. So it's definitely worth doing before you apply the clear. So I'm going to give it a quick run over with my tack rag before I apply the clear. That's going to pick up anything that might have landed on the surface while I've been kind of puttering around. It's also going to pick up any dry metallics that kind of land on the surface as well. So just like to give it a quick run over and then fire away my clear, which I will be using, I think it was 923-200 Glaser clear on this. So I'll be applying it as usual with my SATA RP, around 28 PSI I'm guessing. I usually just do it by ear now. But I always have to reset it in between each job because I'm usually running back and forth between this booth and the other one, so the pressure is going to be a little different depending on where I'm spraying. And I'm going to apply it fairly wet. I find it doesn't usually have to be perfect on the first coat. You can make up for it up to some degree on the second, but you want it to go down as nice as possible here. So I'm going to try to maintain about 50% overlap here. You can probably tell that my hand-eye coordination isn't always as good as it should be, and there's a bit of forgiveness when you're spraying clear, but you want to try to shoot for 50%. So the second coat's going on here after about 5-10 minutes again. Once the clear tacks up, And we're going to spray the offsets first. So inside the wheel wells, any angled edges, and then do the flat part of the panel, working our way from the top to the bottom. I guess you could go bottom to top if you really wanted to. I don't know that there's any advantage to doing it that way, but you know, don't let me stop you. So you want to spray it here like you mean it, because once it dries, this is, you know, how it's going to look. You can always polish it to correct it, but you want to avoid polishing when you can. That's the best way to do it is, you know, spray your second coat on so it just shines. So here's the bumper you could see off in the distance, just putting the final coat of clear on it. I'm going to bake this job. You don't always have to. Well, you don't have to. If you have a, you know, baking booth, then I guess it makes sense to bake it, right? And then we're done. So let me show you this cover that I just painted, and it's an aftermarket cover. And what drives me nuts about these covers is the excess material that they put along the edges. Now usually my prep guys do quite a bit better job of fixing these edges before I get them, but sometimes, you know, this is how they end up, and I might be respraying this one yet. So that extra material, the only way to really fix that is sand it down with something coarse and prime it, and you know, any money that you save with the cover usually goes into work, you know, fixing those edges, which is kind of a pain. And one other thing I just want to point out on this job, you can see in a second that it's obviously been painted a few times, and judging by the fact that they were taping off the mirror, it probably wasn't done at the best place. And I'm going to show you, once we get to the door handle, there's a minor run there that wasn't very apparent until my first coat of clear. I didn't really expect my prep guys to pick it up because, you know, it's very, very, very minor, but you know, I don't think anybody's going to see it there. It kind of drives me a bit nutty just knowing it's there myself, I think. But yeah, it's very tiny, and if you paint over an existing run, there's very little you can do. I might have a bit of success with this one because I didn't actually bring any color that far, so it's just clear, but I'm probably not going to take that chance. So that's it for today, guys. Thanks as always for watching, and don't forget to leave me a comment. Later.